Yo, what's up, everybody? And my book drops right away. Hey, everybody. All right, here we go. So, thankfully, I got the internet working. Sorry for the delay there. Let's go. Okay. Let's wait for everybody to get in here and make sure I'm live. And there we go. Okay. All right. And there we go. Okay. So, what's up, everybody? So, happy start of the week. And today we're going to be covering Richard III by, shout out to everybody in the chat there, and shout out to everybody watching this later. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to dive right into this. So today we are covering, where's my case? Today we are covering, here it is. Today we're covering this film, Richard III, 1995 film by Ian McKellen, who produced the film, acted in it. He was the executive producer. He didn't direct the play, but he did basically do the entire production. He scored the financing for the film, and it's really his. It's a Shakespearean history. We talked about Shakespeare yesterday. We've mentioned Shakespeare a bunch of times on the other streams. We've covered a few of his plays. And yesterday we covered the Henry V, St. Crispin's Day speech, and the beginning of Richard III, right? Now is the winter of our discontent. Today, we're going to be covering this entire film. I've got so much stuff around me. It's hard to keep track of everything. I just put it down. There we go. So today, again, we're going to be covering Richard III by Ian McKellen. And if you want my opinion, thank you for asking that question again. If you want my opinion on the authorship question, then see yesterday's stream. I talked about that briefly. I'm not really going to address it, but I addressed it yesterday in the stream. But it's a good question. It's a fine question, but it's one that's come up a bunch. And the authorship question from Shakespeare, but it's evident that Shakespeare is the author. He was a real guy. That's all I'm going to say about it. But thank you for asking that question. I really do appreciate it. And so, yes. So Richard III by Ian McKellen. I'm going to just continue to say by Ian McKellen. What's up, Green Feathers? Good to see you, homie. And this is a great film, you guys. I just rewatched it. I've watched this movie dozens of times over the years. And I first saw it when I was a teenager in a British literature class. It's such a great movie. It's it's one of the best Shakespeare adaptations, and it came from a stage production that Ian McKellen was in playing Richard. He's played Richard a few times. Now, the play is, again, it's a history genre. In the Shakespeare wrote 3 genres of plays, right? He wrote tragedy, comedy, and history. And this is it's really part of the Henriade series of plays, right? Because it's about the Wars of the Roses. And it's the end of the English Civil War in the 1400s. And so what happens is that essentially the play begins with the end of the war, with the enmity between various members of the Plantagenet family coming to terms. And then Richard sort of, through a series of stratagems and maneuvers, takes over. And this movie is really well done. So, all right, let me just dive into it here. So let's see. First of all, sorry, dog barking. Oh, hold on a second, you guys. Come here, baby. Come here. So the play begins with an introduction where basically, hold on, guys. I'm sorry. The dog's barking. Hold on a second. Come here, baby. Come here. Come here. No, we're not doing that, okay? We're not doing that today. Come here. Come here. Come over here and sit with me. That's what you get for a live stream. Yes. She's trying to talk to you in the background, Ellie. And so the play begins. It's first of all, it sticks close to the play in a number of ways. Remember, we've talked about how in a Shakespearean production, one of the key rules is that you cannot add words, right? The dialogue, all of the words you can cut words, but you can't add them. And one of the things this movie does is that one of the things that McKellen does, because he co-wrote the screenplay, and is that he is pretty he cuts a lot of the text, and he just keeps like essential elements because it fits the film format. So at the beginning of the movie, we get this. The movie begins, and we see like in blood red on the screen, sort of an introduction to what's happened in the Wars of the Roses, right? And then all of a sudden, we have these. We see right away that it's this 19th. I put 1940s in the description, but it's actually like more like the 30s. And we see these two guys in a sort of an English, manor house in a wartime setting, which is very 1930s. And the one guy, like he said, he dismisses the other guy. He sits down to like a steak and wine dinner, and then the dog like looks up and he hears something, and then the guy said, tells the dog to be quiet, and then he hears basically you feel the roar of a tank, and this tank bursts in through this library wall, and then these soldiers come in, and a character comes in like with a gas mask on and like a Luger in his hand, and he puts two in the chest and one in the head of the guy, right? And then we hear this sort of Vader-esque breathing of a guy in a gas mask, and then it goes bam, and the letters Richard III come up on the screen, and so automatically it's like the movie is really like over the top and really really campy. And so we find out that like that's Richard. Okay. So we see the introduction speech where, now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the son of York. And it's Richard. And he's wearing this like uniform. He's wearing the blatant uniform of a SS Obergruppenführer with like a high collar minus the particular symbol that I'm not going to say online. But that is a theme that he takes for the set design throughout the thing. And the film actually is highly regarded. The critics loved it. I love the movie. I'll probably keep saying play instead of film, so forgive me if I do that. But it was nominated for a bunch of BAFTAs. Not like that means anything, especially now. But it won for best set design and best costume. It was nominated for a few Oscars. Ian McKellen was nominated for best actor. And it's really a great film. And it's got like a star-studded cast. I don't know if you would call it star-studded, but it's certainly star-studded in terms of the like elites of the British stage. And a lot of them later went on, even though they're old, to be like seen in a lot of stuff, even in an American audience. Like for instance, the Queen Mother in the movie is what's her face, Dame Maggie Smith. The old bag in Downton Abbey. And so it's got Kristen Scott Thomas. Robert Downey Jr. is in the film. He's great in this movie. He has like 3 lines. He plays Rivers, and he's great because he was in the film just because Ian McKellen asked him, and he didn't think he would be in it, but he wanted to be in a Shakespearean production. And interestingly, this movie lost out the Oscar nominations to another movie, Restoration, which stars Robert Downey Jr. and Ian McKellen. It was made the same year, 1995. And Restoration is about King Charles II being restored. What's up, Jeff? Being restored to the throne. And yeah, you guys, before I go on, please see those links in the description for Cash App, PayPal, and I actually dropped the Streamlabs link in there. I'm not sure it's going to work here because I don't know if it works yet, but if you want to try it, if you want to drop me a Streamlabs donation or a donation at all, yeah, I certainly appreciate it. And thank you to those who donated. Thank you to Ellie. Thank you, TGF, Kristen, everybody who's donated recently, and I really appreciate it. So yeah. Please see if you can drop some of the, look at those links and drop some fat cash, so we can keep doing this. We're gonna keep doing this because I enjoy doing this, and this is the first like pure film analysis we've done here. I did one at Instagram for a Liam Neeson movie just for fun, but we usually leave our film analysis to Jay's analysis over there. But I don't think he's going to analyze this film, especially. But I just thought it would be fun because it is pure Shakespeare and it's in line with what we're doing, right? So anyway, what happens is Richard tells us, he breaks the fourth wall. He breaks the fourth wall and he tells us directly to camera that because he cannot dance, because he cannot, be fashionable, he is determined to prove a villain. And it's interesting in that scene. I would analyze that scene as one of the themes that is in the text of the play, but also that McKellen does pretty expertly in this film, is he manipulates the use of the camera itself as a fourth wall that he breaks, and it's like a mirror. There are constant references to mirrors in this play. So, for instance, at the end of that first or the second scene, rather, right after his opening monologue, he's in a bathroom. He's in a bathroom, and he's like looking in a mirror here, and we see him talking to himself, and then he notices that there's a camera. Basically, he breaks the fourth wall, and he speaks directly to us, and he does that a number of times in the film. He also talks about he's determined to see his shadow as he passes. His mother says something about walking in front of a glass, right in front of a mirror, and this is obviously the way we would look at this. The symbolism here is that just like in Macbeth, right, where it's I'm determined to be look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Well, in this, it's the same. It's the contrast between appearance and reality, but it's more than that in this film. It's also about the shattering of expectations and the shattering of the psyche in terms of a lot of the dark stuff that happens in this. Richard III is just like Macbeth in that he is a villain, but there's a difference because Richard is like he is giddy. That's the best word I can use to describe it. He loves his villainy. He's a lot more like Iago, although Iago in Othello, Shakespearean actors have two characters, male actors have two characters that they dream of playing. One is obviously Hamlet, and the other is Iago, because Iago is the pure villain. But Iago is also sort of a more, he has no reasons for what he does. He is just a villain. Richard gives us reasons, right? He says, I'm going to be a villain because of this. Macbeth's villainy is confusing in the sense that he is, he's not nihilistic, as we said in the Macbeth analysis. Go back and watch that if you haven't seen it. But he is certainly he's like on a trajectory, and he is playing the part of we know he's the villain and we root for him just like Richard, but it's slightly different. So I just want to skip to this scene where it's right after that. It's the start of the play. This play reminds me a lot of Titus Andronicus in the sense that that Shakespeare has a lot of fun in this play. Like, it's really fun. But the crazy thing is that it takes the form of a tragedy in the sense that like everyone dies. But it's not a tragedy. It's not by any sense of or any definition of tragedy. It's a pure history. And that's crazy because all this stuff did happen. All these people did die. It's a true story. Now, he takes liberties with it, right? Dramatic liberties. But the language like is so much like, so I was gonna say, like, if you are a person, if you're even if you're a lot older, and you've never really liked Shakespeare, and you just thought, okay, maybe I need to look into this a little bit. Maybe I need to see, what's going on here with this dude who gave us our language, and everything sort of alludes back to him. He has this immense body of work. If you always thought like, I don't get it, this would be the movie to watch because because he really like they live the language in this movie. It really makes sense. And I got that, at 15 when I first saw it. So what happens here is immediately after Richard, who is this like special forces guy in the beginning, as we said, puts two in the chest, one in the head of the old king. What he does is we see Kristen Scott Thomas, who's phenomenal in this movie. Again, very few lines. They cut a lot of the lines, but she is in the morgue and she's going to look at her dead husband and she sees his body there. And then Richard like goes down and seduces her and then ends up marrying her. And after so what he does is he seduces her and he's very sincere in that he does take responsibility for it. He tells her that he did it, but that it was his duty, right, to do it. And somehow he manages to convince her that she should be with him. And what he does is like, he gets down on his knees and he holds this dagger. And he says basically like, look, if you think I'm lying to you, kill me. And then she says, no, I'm not going to do that. So then he puts the dagger to the blade to his throat and he kind of pushes it in. And he says, then I shall kill, I shall do it myself. And she says, no. And that's when he knows that he's got her, right? And then right after that, after he walks out, he says, please, would you bid me farewell? And she says, I won't bid you farewell, but if you want, you can imagine like in your dreams that I bid you farewell, and that should be enough. So it's like, again, we get this like dreams versus, there's a lot about dreams in this play, by the way. And then when he walks out, he immediately turns back to us, back to the camera. And he says one of my favorite parts. He says, was any woman in this manner wooed? Was any woman in this manner won? I, who killed her husband and his father. He's like, he delights that nobody has ever won over a woman like this, right? Even the guy who killed her husband and his father. That's crazy. And that actually, remember that when we're analyzing Shakespeare in terms of the text, I'm not paying so much attention to the text in this one. I'm just going on the film. But when we talk about Shakespearean text, it's important to note that nothing is accidental. There are no like loose ends. The levels of the language always connect with one another. So this is one of the first scenes where we have this revelation of the method, where he's blatant in telling us, the audience, and telling the character, is it Lady Anne? Is that her name? He's done this, and he delights in telling them to their face what he's done. Right? Thank you. He relishes his depravity. Right? This movie has everything. The play has everything. It's got blackmail, intrigue, espionage, murder, lies, cheating, manipulation. This is like a Sam Hyde skit, right? Cheating, manipulation, gaslighting, drugs, torture, sadism, nazism, megalomania. And I just took some notes. McKellen's production it's fantastic. It's not really fantastical, but it is fantastic. It's unique, inventive, it's giddy, and it's fairly true to the text. It's really campy. What's up, Jerry? What's up, Expo? Shout out to you, everybody. Sub to Exposing Powerful live streams. The production it's campy in that it's like, he's like, he wears this like, NAZI uniform, and all of the symbolism is blatantly fascist. It's blatantly authoritarian. Hey, shout out to Allison ADH Devotional Heart. Go to her channel and sub if you haven't. Of course, you probably already have if you're watching this. She's big time. And speaking of subs, guys, we're 2 away from 100. We made it pretty far on this journey, right? In 3 weeks' time, right? We're 2 away from 100. I think that's pretty good. away from 100 subs, considering like we built this completely from our own group things. We you know, this thing of ours, right? So I think that's pretty cool, but we're going to keep moving up. And you never know. If you get to, if I get to 100 subs, we'll have some kind of, you know, based, you know, pseudo Chad nerd party, right? We can do something fun. Okay. So, yeah, thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate you. So, what Richard does in this is it's interesting because you forget when you're watching this that the play, okay, the play is set. I mean, the real events took place in the 1400s, right? The late 14, like about 1485. When was Richard alive? He was only 32 when he died, but it was like, it was it was late 15th century, and then it was written in the late 16th, early 17th century. Yes. But it is, and then the movie takes place in the 30s. So we have like 3 eras already. But it is relevant now more than ever because the play is about espionage, blackmail, appearance versus reality, power plays. In fact, Richard even, he creates, let's say, fake flags, right? And intrigue to enact emergency powers and become the Lord Protector and then the monarch. I mean, hello. People thought this was just a, you know, 1930s thing, right? With the burning of the Reichstag, but it's obviously something it's something that's always happened in terms of politics and power. It has happened recently in Canada. It continues to happen, right? This happens. I mean, just in that thing that's happening over in that other part of the world, right? The Z person just shut down all the opposition and all the political parties. So this continues to happen, right? And Richard uses every trick, every Machiavellian, even though this is pre-Machiavellian, right? Well, Shakespeare wrote it post-Machiavelli, right? He uses every trick in the book, every single one, to rise to power. He gets exactly what he wants. And first he's the Duke of York, right? And then he becomes the Lord Protector, which is a title that later that Cromwell took on, right? During the Protectorate in the English Civil War in the 1600s. But then he becomes the monarch. I mean, he's essentially, right. What's the difference between the monarch and the dictator? Well, the monarch can be authoritarian, but the monarch leaves a legacy, right? So he has a family that will continue to bear his title afterwards. The dictator does not. Although Richard has no legacy in this, and actually, Richard is a very Caligula-esque sort of case. He's like a combination of Caligula, Iago, and Satan. He's blatantly, he uses the same motivations and the same language that Milton uses for Satan in Paradise Lost. And he's like Caligula because he comes in from this family, right? Caligula came from, you know, his uncle Tiberius, and he's raised in the power structure, and then he goes completely maniacal. But he, you know, I mean, in terms of his personality, he keeps it under control, but he's a total maniac, right? And he does that, and he does everything that he can, and then he's gone in like 3 years. So let's see. Let me see what else I wrote here. So what happens also is that at the end of that party at the beginning, let me go back to that. Clarence, the other Duke, because there's been a truce in the Civil War, and he's been arrested, and he's going to go off to prison. And the film sets in this movie are great because it's filmed at like, there's a lot of like combination of, you know, English. There's like, it's not Tudor, but it's like, you know, it's like they show Parliament and Buckingham Palace, but they also, there's one scene that takes place at the Victorian Palace in Brighton, which is like Indian. And then there's also Battersea Station. A lot of the war scenes take place at like Battersea Power Station and stuff. And one of them in it I recognized is an old derelict power station that's now the Tate Modern in London. And anyway, so Clarence is taken off, and Richard goes and greets him, and he's like, "Oh, Clarence, I feel so bad for you that they're taking you off," because he's blamed on somebody else. And then they take him off, and then he turns to us, and he's like, "Oh, Clarence, you're such a good man that I shall shortly send you to heaven, if heaven will take this gift from my hands," because this guy's a demon man. Anyway, Clarence is still in prison like days later, and Richard's wanted him dead. And but he comes out and he has a soliloquy in the rain, and the rain in the film is a foreshadowing. The rain and the language that he uses in the monologue and the soliloquy are both foreshadowing his death, his actual death. So he says, let's see, he dreams, because in his the dream that he shares with us, he dreams that he will be drowned. And he sees in his dream, he sees that he's in the bottom of the ocean, and he sees like skulls with, instead of eye holes, they have like gemstones, and they make a mockery. He uses the words mockery. He makes a mockery of like the remains of the dead on the seafloor. And then he dreams, as part of the dream, he dreams that that demons are attacking him, and that when he says that he could not believe that when he wakes up that he was not in hell. So we get this infernal imagery. And later on, Richard will say one of his reasons for killing Hastings, who's the prime minister later on in the movie, will be that he says, who has done this witchcraft to me? Who has made me and he has this, it's funny because now watching it, you can see that he's obviously like, McKellen has this, his hand is like this. It's very campy because Richard he's a hunchback, as we discussed yesterday. Richard is a hunchback. He was a hunchback in real life. He probably was not like a total toad like he is in the movie, and like he's played sometimes. But they found his they found his bones under that parking lot just a few years ago, and he was killed. He was the last English monarch killed in battle. He died at the Battle of Bosworth Field, and that's. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But in the movie, he says, who hath done this witchcraft upon me? Who's like cursed me with this mark of Cain, this Grendel-esque, going back to the Beowulf stream, Grendel-esque mark. But he's like, he's like, all he's doing is he's holding his hand like this, right? But actually, when I watched it this time, I saw that like his hand is bigger than his normal hand, and he's obviously got a longer arm. So it's just like this cheap stage prop that he's holding, but it's funny because it's so campy. And he says, he walks up behind Hastings and he says, whoever's done this, and he slaps him in the neck and he says, off with his head. Because right before that, Shakespeare has employed the thing that they always do in these plays where he does this, Sophocles does this in Oedipus Rex, right? Because one of the guys, maybe it's Richard, asks Hastings, like, what would you do? What are we going to do about these like machinations upon me, upon these these plots and threats to kill me? And Hastings says something like, I would chop off his head. And that is, Richard gets him to say that because he damns himself. And then the next scene, Richard stands up and he says, follow me, those who love me. And he walks out. And in the next scene, we see that Hastings is dropping down in the gallows, losing his head. So he's another casualty. Let's see. He says, there's another great scene where Shakespeare employs another plot device that he does in a lot of this. He does it in Macbeth, remember, where he's talking to the two assassins. He hires these two assassins to kill Clarence in the prison. And he has to do that because Clarence is inside the prison, so he has to give a warrant to the two assassins so that they can enter the prison. But he discovers his favorite assassin because there's this great scene where like he walks into kind of a stable. Richard is constantly dressed in this film like he's on a military footing. And he walks into like a stable and he sees a horse. And then he sees this dude kind of in the background who's like throwing apples to a boar. Now the symbolism is obvious for those who know, in that Richard's personal device, his motto was a boar. And so, feeding apples to the boar is like, first we get the biting of the apple, right? So we get this idea of, we are about to be inducted into this stratagem because we are biting the apple of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so to speak, here with the Richard Lucifer Satan serpent character feeding us. Because what happens is, he asks the guy, who is that, man? And the guy says, that is Tyrrell. And we go over and we see the great Northern Irish actor Adrian Dunbar, who is feeding the apples to this boar. And then he says, he greets him, and I forget what he says. He says, I'm your loyal servant. And then Richard says, "Are you?" in a very Ian McKellen way. "Are you?" And he hands him an apple. And the way that Richard like throws the apple at the boar is hilarious, because he like takes the apple and he throws it, and you hear this squeal, this squeal. I can't even do the impression. He hears the squeal off screen he obviously threw the apple at the boar. And that's a sign of his sadism, but also the fact that, the boar is himself. And Richard constantly makes references to the fact that he hates himself in the play. He hates himself. So because he hates himself, he hates everyone else, and he's determined to destroy everything. Later on, let's see. He hires the two assassins at like a rooftop. They're at like a rooftop, just friendly, after work get together. And you can see they're like pigeons, like the Mike Tyson pigeons, or like in the movie Ghost Dog, right? And then you see the pigeons. Why do assassins always, why do like hard people, like violent people, always have pigeons? They always collect pigeons. I guess because they're the only thing that they can be gentle with, maybe. Oh wow. I got 100 subs. Right on, you guys. All right, for sure. We'll have some sort of base nerd party next stream. Thank you. I appreciate it, everybody. Hey, that's our first big milestone. That's like our first actual leveling up milestone. So thank you. We wouldn't have this. I say we because this is all of us, and we wouldn't have this without you guys, certainly. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Base Mom, for alerting us to that. That's cool. All right, so anyway, so Richard hires these two assassins, right? And one of them is Adrian Dunbar Tyrrell, and the other one is this kind of sort of bigger dude with a mustache. And he's saying, "Go on, I want you to kill this guy." And this is their initiation into Richard's circle. And the reason this is different from the scene in Macbeth, where Richard talks to the two assassins, is because we know right away that we know in Macbeth that when he hires these two killers, they're so low, they're so base, that Macbeth has to Shakespeare, first of all, has to make it prose, right? And Macbeth has to bring himself down to their level, and we know that he's going to dispose of them after they do his bidding and get rid of Banquo and Flance. Of course, they fail with Flance, so he gives them one chance, and they screw it up, and he gets rid of them. But Macbeth is perfectly willing to get rid of anybody himself. Richard doesn't get rid of anybody himself, except in the very beginning. He uses these other two guys, and the difference is that in this play and in this movie, Richard obviously really likes these guys. He likes Tyrrell, especially because he likes that Tyrrell is willing to kill for him, because he likes loyalty. Everyone hates Richard, but they act like they love him because he's powerful. So what happens is he sends them over to do their first kill, to do first blood. They're going to draw first blood. They get into the prison. And of course, Clarence is asleep or he's bathing. He's in a bathtub. So we get the fulfillment of the dream that he had where he was underwater, and also the rain, the foreshadowing with the rain. And when they walk in, the two killers will oh, before they walk in, the bigger guy, the dude with the mustache, he says, listen, man, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He says, listen, man, I'm kind of having feelings about doing this. I'm kind of backing out of this. And Tyrrell's like, what are you backing out for? And the guy says, well, he says, I'm afraid of being damned. So he literally mentions the fact that he's afraid of being damned for killing Clarence. He's afraid that he's going to go to hell. And the conversation is so brief. Tyrrell says, like, listen, man, just remember what our reward is. And the guy says, something like, our salvation is in his pocket, is in Richard's pocket. So they're being paid for it. So then, I guess he loses his conscience. And they walk in, and Tyrrell kind of jumps down on this grate. And then and there's this great like repartee between the two. Clarence says, what are you? So and they say, he says, a man as you are. And then Clarence says, but not as I am, royal. And then Tyrrell says, nor not as we are, loyal. Which is like great. I mean, it's amazing wordplay. It's fun. It's also showing that these two guys have in terms of the hierarchy of their new world that Richard is putting them in, loyalty matters more than royalty, right? Because think about this, the entire play, and in real life, the entire war, the entire Civil War was fought over family. It was members of the same family, right? They were all cousins. They were all related to each other. And throughout the medieval era, right? Well, I would say it's different now, but it's not, right? Because, we have a power structure and we have all of these people related. If they're not actually related now, in terms of the ruling elite, they are certainly related in terms of they're interrelated in terms of their business dealings, their machinations, their power, their structure, where they are in society. And so they have this sort of interlocking, their futures are interlocked, right? But then what happens is they push him down in the bath and they cut his throat. Now, in reality, I think Clarence was actually drowned in a wine barrel. Which again, I mean, what's the symbolism of that? Well, it would be, I guess, we talked about the wickedness, the sort of apple imagery, the talk of cursing and of witchcraft. We get Richard as an obvious sort of Satan figure who's subverting everything. We got the talk of damnation, and so now the drowning, first of all, is a reverse baptism, right? It's also an inversion of the Eucharist in a way, right? Because Richard is giving them their salvation not through the Holy Eucharist. He's giving them their salvation through death in wine, right? And but of course, in the movie, McKellen changes it to a bath. Let's see, what was I going to say? There's one other great line. There's one line that I always think of in other plays, and that is, and I'd forgotten it until I just rewatched it, and that is when they come down. The characters in this movie, most of the characters have very few lines, except Richard, who's in every scene, almost every scene. But the lines that they speak are so potent, they're so powerful. And when they come down to behind Clarence in the bath, Clarence is he's naive. He's really, actually, he's just stupid. And Richard states that early in the play. But the guy says, listen, man, why are you here? And they say, he says, and they say, you know why? And he says, to murder me. Oh, and they say, yes. And So they reveal to him his death right beforehand. And then Clarence naively says, "Oh, listen, go to my cousin Richard. He'll save me. He'll get you out of this." And the other assassin says, the way he says it is, he says, "You are deceived. Your brother Richard hates you." And it's just the way the guy says it is so good. It's so good because it is so bad. And it's so true now, right? I mean, we talk about the way that we are infantilized, in terms of, as a human race by the people in charge. We are infantilized. They do these things where they gaslight us and they hate us, right? You're not going to be saved by voting, by politics, by the power structure. It's not going to save you, right? Let's talk for a second about before I go. So yeah, let's talk about this before I go into what happens in the rest of the play. Some of the themes in the play, the parallels with the Third Reich in this are striking. I mean, it's obviously purposeful, but McKellen found a good sort of alternate history in which to set this. And he says, let's see. Okay, so Richard's initial scene in the film, his initial killing scene, reminds me a lot of the Night of the Long Knives, because first of all, Richard is constantly wearing like we said, this SS uniform, and what happens is, like, when he breaks into the guy's room and then he kills him, and then the new government starts. It's obviously, if it's not purposeful, then it must have been in Ian McKellen's subconscious. This is like pretty much a mirror image or a replay of the Night of the Long Knives when HITLER broke into the SA barracks and stormed in. And it says in that Richard Evans book, The Coming of the Third Reich, and in Alan Bullock's Hitler biography, HITLER biography, and it also says it in Ian Kershaw's book that when they broke in to arrest Ernst Röhm, HITLER had a gun in one hand and a whip in the other hand. I'll always remember that. And that he broke into the room, and Ernst Röhm was in there with, he was doing creeper things in there, and they arrested him. And in this, let's see, so HITLER didn't kill him, but he did order the deaths, unlike this where Richard blatantly shoots the guy. And then let's see, there's another scene where Richard takes immense pleasure from looking at the photographs of one of the assassinations. He's like sitting there, and he's like on this chaise longue, and he's like got these black and white photographs, and he's like smoking a cigarette, and he's looking at the pictures of Hastings' dead body after he's been hanged. And remember, hanged, not hung. Hung is an object. Hanged is a person, right? Method of execution. And he's looking at them, and he kind of like, oh, and he like lies back on the chaise longue, like in pleasure, in this sadistic pleasure, right? And that is actually what HITLER did after the Valkyrie attempted coup, right, when he survived at the Wolf's Lair, the Wolfschanze, and he had what's his name? Is it Stauffenberg? What's the guy's name that Tom Coon played in the movie? Is it Count von Stauffenberg? I forget his name, but anyway, the Valkyrie Plot. He had them hanged with piano wire, and he had them film it. And then I read an account that he showed that like at the Eagle's Nest, and that like he was in like, it was an immense, gross pleasure over this. So there's also, let's see, there's the obvious thing in the film of all of the symbolism. I mean, they are blatantly the SS. They don't do a fascist salute in the movie. They do like a variation of it. And then all of the flags and banners are just SWAS. They're just NAZI flags with the SWASTIKA emblem removed and a boar put in place. So he does that because it's over the top and it's campy, right? And I suppose a critic could say like, oh, this is too much, but like, why not? Why not do that, right? If you're going to have an adaptation of a film, of a play that is about, a total sadistic annihilation of a bunch of people, right? A total coup, all of this stuff. Why not make it, relevant in terms of like something that everybody can recognize? Because in a sense, it popularizes the film. The film wasn't like a popular film, right? But it is a good film though. It's a great film. I think it was made on like a £5 million budget, which seems incredible to us now, but actually that is probably more that's probably more accurate in terms of a film's budget. We all know that, like, yeah, we all know. Sorry, I had to swallow my Red Bull there. We all know that, when they say like, oh, the Transformers movie was, budget was $200 million. Give me a break, man. We all know that's a money laundering operation. There's no way that it costs that much money. That's so ridiculous. Right. And I'm not just saying that from speculation. I know that. I as I said before, I have a friend in the film industry. I went to a drama school. I know that these things don't cost that much. $200 million, right? $500 million to make a film. The proof of this is the fact that go and look sometime in IMDb at the box office receipts for the average movie. And it's ridiculous. They never make money. Like most movies do not make any money. And that's why you have these terrible movies like, you have the big blockbusters because the blockbusters will pay for 100 other movies. But they still don't the profit margin is not that great. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? Okay, so anyway, one clever thing in this is that Kristen Scott Thomas, who I love, I've always liked her. She is... We mentioned earlier that she is the wife of the guy that Richard plays at the beginning. I forget who it is. It's not Edward. It's I forget who it is. But anyway, she's great in this because he makes her into like a pillhead junkie. And that works because she's obviously completely wrecked by her husband's death. And then she's wrecked by the fact that she marries Richard. I don't think she has kids. And it's also that's not unbelievable. You can go into the Daily Mail and some of the backstories about drug addiction amongst the royals and the elites, and it's pretty rampant. Heroin addiction, all that stuff. So there's one scene where like they're watching a film of the hanging, and she's like totally zonked out, and she's literally shooting up in the scene. And Richard like looks at her. Imagine Richard looks at her with disgust, right? And you can tell when he does that he's going to kill her. And actually in the play, her death is kind of, it's not a loose end, but it's never explained like why she doesn't come back. And I forget what happened to her in real life. It's just like the Princes in the Towers, one of them is the son of Edward, who has just died of a stroke in the play. And he does that because he's the one who takes over at the beginning, and Richard is right under him. So Richard has to get rid of Edward in order to become king. I know this sounds like really convoluted, but when you watch the film or you read the play, it's very evident. There's just a lot of names because these were real people. But anyway, there's Edward. I think it's Edward V, and there's a scene where they're at like the Brighton Palace, and they're having a truce. They're making amends, and Richard shows up, and he like shakes everybody's hand. He's wearing like a tan suit, and he shakes everybody's hand, and they say, "Oh, if only Clarence were here." And Richard says, "Oh, you have not heard? My brother Clarence is dead," and they immediately freak out. Edward, who's already in a wheelchair and who has this he's played by John Wood. He has this nasty cough, and he has a stroke. and then he dies. So then the two princes are going to take over. One of them is really young. So when they get there, Richard greets them, and Richard says, they say, "Where are we going to stay, Uncle? Where are we going to stay, Uncle?" They don't have Cockney accents, but they might as well sound like that. And Richard says, "Oh, for your own protection, we're going to put you in the tower." And we know, the dramatic irony is, we know that he's going to kill these guys. He put them in the tower to kill them, right? And this is the legendary Princes in the Towers, which was later confirmed, I think a lot later, because they never showed up again. But everybody knew that Richard had them killed. And then later it turned up that they found their bones at the bottom of a well. They'd been strangled. These two little boys. So Richard had them murdered. And then, so he's Lord Protector, and then he becomes king. We didn't mention the death of Robert Downey Jr.'s character in this movie. He plays this guy, Lord Rivers, who has like a much bigger part in the play, and he lives a lot longer. But in the movie, in the movie, he doesn't have that big of a part. And actually, he's really cool. Come here, baby. Come here. You can come sit by me. Come here, baby. Come on. That's a good girl. Come here. So in the movie, Robert Downey Jr., this was made in 95. So Robert Downey Jr. is in the midst of his own heroin addiction, heroin, crack cocaine addiction. And he obviously, he looks totally out of it. He arrives like on a DC-3, and he's got like a cigarette dangling from his lips. And he's got these cool clothes on. He's like looking around, and there's this stewardess who he's obviously just been with or whatever. And then Richard actually in the play he blackmails him. He sets him up in a honey trap. To discredit him so that he can't be used in the power scheme. And then in the film, what happens is Rivers talks back to Richard, and the next scene is he's in bed with the same stewardess, and he's got his shirt off or what, kind of undone or whatever, and he's drinking cognac and smoking a cigarette while she's doing things, and she kind of disappears off screen, if you know what I mean. But then he has this look, and he goes, and we're like, "What is this?" And it's almost like John Carpenter or something. All of a sudden, this blade comes up through his stomach. So the physics of it, I'm not sure, work, right? Because obviously Tyrrell or somebody had to be under the bed and stab him up through the bed, through the two mattresses, and then through his back and through his chest, which is pretty hardcore. But that's pretty. It's obviously not funny, but it's funny in terms of its ridiculousness, right? I'm not laughing the fact that the dude lost his life, but we're watching a movie and a film here, right? So anyway, that's the end of Robert Downey Jr. Rivers, and let's see what else happens. Kristen Scott Thomas, she later ODs in the film, and we know that because she's lying there. We know she's gonna OD or something. He probably OD'd her. I think in reality she was poisoned, is what it was. But anyway, she's lying there, and there's this creepy scene where she's lying there. We don't know if she's just got her eyes open and she's just sitting there, but a spider crawls across her face. And the reason they do that is because at one point the Queen Mother, Dame Maggie Smith, calls him, she refers to Richard as a bottled spider. That makes me think of, what was the name of that dude? The spider, the Duke de, not Richelieu. What was that French guy's name? The Spider King. What was his name? He's that creeper guy who he was a Satanist, right? In the 1400s in France. He kidnapped all those people, and he got caught doing creeper things and things involving BLOOD. What was that guy's name? The Spider or something. Anyway, so let's see. So I should mention, as far as the film goes and as far as Ian McKellen goes, Ian McKellen, speaking of creeps, Ian McKellen, we know he's a creeper in real life. But he's such a great actor. I saw him on stage in London. I mentioned that before. I think it was at Uncle Vanya or something. And he is a consummate actor. This film is really his, this is a testament to how great he is, because he's in total control over the language, but more importantly, actually for the film, he's in total control over his like body instrument. There's nothing that he does in this movie that is not perfect. Like, so he plays this hunchback deformed character, but it's interesting that all the little props that he has, you realize watching it, like how much of his life is maneuvered around him having one arm and being a hunchback and being this deformed character. Like there's a scene where like he's putting on a glove and he's like fingering the glove with his hands and he like puts it on with his teeth. When he gives the ring to Lady Anne, he's got a ring on one hand and he takes it. It's so gross. He takes it off like with his mouth and he's like holds it in his mouth and it's like so nasty. Then he gives her the ring. The way he lights his cigarettes, the way that he like has a white flag at one point. He's waving at Clarence. The way he waves his flag, it's like it's just so unique. Like you believe that this is Richard. So the acting in this is really, I gotta, it's really great. Let's see. Oh, there's a line at the beginning about it's the dudes standing around being dudes, and Richard says something like, "This is what happens when women rule our fortunes." That's kind of a butchering of the line, but they're talking about how like basically they're in this because of all the women in their lives who are doing this to them, and it makes sense in terms of the context of the play because there's the Queen Mother, there's Lady Anne, there's Annette Bening is in this, and the reason that McKellen hired that he put two American actors in the movie, Annette Bening and Robert Downey Jr., who were later in that movie In Dreams together, if you've ever seen that. But anyway, the reason that he put them in the film is because it like presents them as social climbers, I think. Right. So you have this like sort of Anglo-American relationship where like, everybody else is the old money and they're the new money. And even though they are all cousins in real life and in the life of the play, right? But it presents them as sort of outsiders, and it gives justification to us subconsciously that Richard can get rid of them, even though it's never brought up blatantly, right? We talked about mirrors and false glass, the constant breaking of the fourth wall, reflections, Richard's continuous mention of shadows. Let's see. Identity. There's a lot about identity in this. Okay, so this is also the first. This is the first time. What's his name? Dominic West. This is his film debut, and he plays Scott Richmond, who ends up being the hero of the play because he breaks away from Richard, and they fight in real life at Battle of Bosworth, and it's where Richard ends up committing suicide at the end of the play, right? What else happens? Let's see. Hold on a sec. I'm trying to run this at the same time. There we go. Yes, that didn't work. This is why I need a mod here right now. I tried to put my own link in there, and it did not work. Okay, yeah. So that's embarrassing. Yeah, you guys don't forget, please support me. Please support me if you can. Cash App, PayPal. I don't know if the Streamlabs link is working, but you can test it out. That should be working soon. I just can't get my camera connected through the app. It's not recognizing my camera right now, so I should have that soon. Fixed soon, and then we can start answering live questions and comments on the stream, right? Okay, so if there's somebody in here, if you want to post that for me, that'd be great. So let's see. Identity, Dominic West. Let's see. Oh, there's a great scene where, we already said that. What should we do if Hastings is not of our mind? And Richard says, chop off his head. Right. You can ask me questions if you want. Go ahead and ask me a question while I'm doing this. Yeah, that's fine. I should see it. If I had Streamlabs right now, you could be doing it through that. But go ahead. Let's see. what else is there? Okay, so what happens? Basically, what happens in the play is, after that, Richard goes through his coronation. He becomes king. He eliminates all of his enemies, but then he gets a breakaway, which is actually real life. It's not just like a trope. And Richmond and I guess not Hastings, but the admiral in it, I forget his name. They break away. They form an army, and then Richard's on war footing, and he fights. And just like in Macbeth, actually, he ends up sort of alone fighting for his kingdom. And there's the famous line, a horse, my kingdom for a horse. And that is the way McKellen does this in the film is they're in like an old army vehicle where the tires get stuck in the mud, right? Which is symbolic of the fact that now it's almost like foreshadowing. They are broken down, and they are going. He's going to meet his end, but it's like, oh, I'm going to lose my kingdom, and if only I had a horse instead of a vehicle. You could take this in a number of ways. You could take it like, because I think in the play his horse gets shot out from under him, right? And then he says, basically, I'm going to die because my horse got shot out from under me. It all comes down to this one thing. Yes. Also, so he gets chased out onto like a scaffolding in the movie, and there's like fire down beneath him, and Dominic West, Richmond, like chases him out there. And the way that the film ends is Richard says, he says, let's to it pell mell. If not to heaven, then hand in hand to hell. And he falls. Richmond kind of shoots him as he falls, but he falls into the flames, and he's like impaled, right, on a part of the structure. But what a great line, right? What a wonderful bookend to the film and to Richard's life, right? His last word is hell. Yes. It's kind of microcosmic, right? Because the first word he mentions in the whole play is now, and the last is hell, right? So now he is in hell. He's met his end. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you, buddy, for dropping that link in there. So anyway, that's the end of the film. I kind of glossed over the end of the film there, but yeah, it's really great. I mean, everything about this, Richard III. So you look on the back, and they actually, how relevant is this? They actually don't look like fascists here doing a fascist salute. They actually look more like ANTIFA, right? Look at this. Right? It's like NPCs doing a doing a version of their own salute, right? Let's see. Let's look at this question. See if I can can I highlight this on here? Let's see. I can't highlight it here because I'm not on StreamYard. All right, so I'll just read your question here. You said, do you agree that Richard's turning point, at least for us as an audience, is the slaughter of the two princes? He could have exiled his then wife and rehoused the children instead of death. That's a good question. I don't think so. And the reason is because there isn't a turning point in this. I mean, you could make that interpretation. That's a really good interpretation that one could have of the film. I mean, of Richard's character and of his sort of plot line in this, and how we as an audience feel about him. However, I don't think so. I think that there is no real turning point in the play, because we are kind of like Macbeth. We're on a trajectory from the very beginning where we know as an audience right away that Richard is a villain because he tells us. And that means that we're party to his deeds, right? We are made co-conspirators in all the things that he does. And if you accept that, then you accept all of the things that he does. And it's hard. So think about this like sort of on an intellectual or a moral level, in terms of, you would like to think as an audience member that Richard is bad, but he's not going to be all bad, right? Well, That's where I think Shakespeare is brilliant, because what he's showing us, and which is relevant now in today's world and which is true in life, is that the villain, the bad guy, is not a good guy. Okay. And what I mean by that is, we always like to watch movies where we have where we have the bad guys who are the gangsters and we go for them, right? We root for them. We root for, we root for, what's his name? Jimmy Conway in Goodfellas. We root for, De Niro. He's like so badass in that movie. And we root for Ray Liotta and all these people. But the reality is that Jimmy Conway, De Niro's character, is a total scumbag, right? He's a murderous, disgusting thief. Now, and killer. Now, the other side of that is obviously the idea of the good thief, right? The good thief is a thief, but he finds salvation literally with Christ, right, on the cross. And the idea of the good thief, as an allegory for us, is that we can we can it's not too late, right? It's later than we think, but it's not too late. Now, the difference is that Richard is through and through a villain. He tells us so. The first thing he does in the movie is kill a guy, right? So we know that there is no depth to which he will not sink, including probably creeper stuff and the literal murder of two KIDS in the film. And in real life, he really did this, right? This guy really did do this. This is real. They really did do this. He saw two BOYS as impediments to his machinations, so he had them eliminated. And it's totally depraved and evil, right? So Shakespeare is showing us that, listen, man, you're going to go for this guy in this play. You're going to root for him from the beginning because he's charismatic, he's funny, he has fun. But don't forget the fact that he is the bad guy. He's the villain. And think of the guilt that you should feel watching this, knowing that he's done these things, which is why a lot of people, are disgusted by gangster movies for that very fact. And I can understand that. I can dig that. We have this, willing suspension of disbelief, right? When we read Shakespeare, as Coleridge said specifically about Shakespeare, right? Or for us, when we watch gangster or killer movies, where we know it's not real life, but this is real life. This happened. Let's see. You said also the order to kill them served no additional purpose in terms of securing his role as king. Yeah, I mean that's true, right? This is it's like this sadistic pleasure. It doesn't serve a purpose, but it does, in that one of the things that we see in reality and continuously in Shakespeare, there's a continuous theme with Shakespeare, and that's because this happened, especially in real life, in his day. It happens the same now. We just don't see it, or it's covered up, right? And that is that a lot of times, it's what Macbeth says when he says, "I am thus," when he's referring to being king. "I'm thus, but to be safely thus." So, in other words, he wants to eliminate all possibility of anyone being a threat to him whatsoever. Obviously, the irony is that he only creates more enemies because people like Richmond in this movie are disgusted by his villainy and actually do rise up against him. Now, Richmond in the movie is in the position to do that. Now, in the world, there are plenty of people in a position to do these sorts of things, but they never do, right? So, yeah, so I hope that answered that. I mean, that's just my take on it. What else do you guys think about this? I mean, this is a great movie. It's a great play. It's just really enjoyable. And I think maybe one of the reasons that Shakespeare wrote this is because in a way, it's kind of comic relief, or it's a relief from the pressure and the seriousness of the other Henry plays, right? Henry the Fourth, parts 1, 2, and 3. Henry the Fifth, Henry VI, parts 1, 2, and 3. He did Richard. He wrote Richard the Second. He'd written John the First. By the way, King John, about John the First, is one of Shakespeare's. I think it's his first one. It might not be Titus Andronicus. King John might have been his first one. I saw a production of that at the Folger Shakespeare Theater in D.C., starring Kelly McGillis in the 90s. What's her name from Top Gun? And it was so bad. They actually did a back-to-back, a double feature. They did that, and they did As You Like It. I've also never liked As You Like It, although that's got a great villain in it, Malvolio, whose name, right, literally means evil, right? But it's not a great play. I've never really enjoyed that play. I don't really enjoy Shakespeare's comedies, like As You Like It, except for I love Much Ado About Nothing. It's one of my favorite plays. I was in Much Ado About Nothing. I played Benedict. That's great because it's fun. And the alternate version of that, which is similar, is Taming of the Shrew. Taming of the Shrew is a wonderful play. That's great. Yeah, so there's that. But yeah, King John is not a great play. What else? Let's see. I think that's all I've got about Richard III. So yeah, check it out. Great cast. It's got Nigel Hawthorne in it, John Wood, Dominic West, Robert Downey Jr., Annette Bening, Ian McKellen, Adrian Dunbar. Adrian Dunbar is awesome. And a bunch of other people in it. It's really great. So check that out. So that's about all I got, guys. Thank you again for being here with me. I really appreciate it. Please make sure, if you're watching this now or if you're checking this out later, just take 2 seconds and hit that sub button for me. Just subscribe to the channel. I really love it. And I really love it if you did that. And leave me a comment down below after we're done. Thanks for being here in the chat. And especially, if you get a chance, if you got some extra coin, hit that Cash App or PayPal, or see if the Streamlabs link works. We'll be doing that later. We'll have that up and running. But especially the Cash App and PayPal, I really appreciate it. So I can get some equipment, keep the channel going. We're going to keep it going. I love doing this, and I love just being able to talk about literature. We probably won't do Shakespeare for a while. I want to do Romeo and Juliet, but maybe we'll take a break from Shakespeare and get back into more modern literature. We could do. Thanks, David. He subscribed 3 times. Really appreciate it, homie. Speaking of 3 times, right? Tomorrow is 322, you guys. Look out. Listen, do you know about Skull and Bones? They have some of the most ancient rituals, some of the most ancient Egyptian rituals. I have a family audience here, so I can't say. Yeah, tomorrow is 322, so look out. Look out for whatever might happen. But yes, so thank you. Appreciate it, you guys. And I will speak to you later. All right. Peace. Love you guys. Peace.